Today on Locked On Canadiens, Kent Hughes believes in this team and has no time for your doubts.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to 1220 of Locked On Canadiens. I almost forgot to say episode, but this is what we do every day. We do your team every day as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And we're so grateful to all of you for making us your first listen, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts on audio. My name is Laura Saba, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Ian Boisvert. Ian, the State of the Habs press conference happened today with no fanfare at all. How are you feeling after listening to that?
Well, as the resident American on this show, I understood about 20% of it. And every time Kent Hughes would stop speaking in French to say something like hockeyism. Also, he keeps saying waivers. There's a French word for isn't balotage? Like, there's a French word for waivers. And I'm like, even I know that, Kent. What are you doing?
Balotage, yeah. As we were talking before recording, Kent Hughes seemed to be a little bit testy and begrudging in his answers. I thought it was really interesting because what he said about the team was mostly positive, and any difficult questions that he answered them honestly. And I think, I don't think any one of us would take issue with the things that he said. But what I thought was really, really interesting is that he seems to have a long-term view that this was the progression that they expected at this point. And I thought that was interesting because if he also did allude to those games, those games against the Washingtons and the Pittsburghs where it was not very positive. And what was really interesting to me was he said that there was something that wasn't working. And this is, again, I'm paraphrasing from French. He said something that wasn't working that is now working, and that's why we're seeing the results we're seeing. And I thought that was really interesting. And I am very curious as to what it was. He also, I think, got asked some questions which I thought were a little bit obvious and would have some obvious answers. But the more he talked, whether it was testy and confrontational a little bit, well, it was a bit subtle in that, but whether he was annoyed or not, like, I think the true message that I got was this team believes in what they're doing. This is how they expected it to work out. Maybe the timing might have been a little bit different than they expected, but they're going to stay the course. Like, this is what they're looking at right now.
Yeah, the one really testy response that I took to in the English portion of the program was, I believe Stu Cowan asked him about, Alex Burrows leaving and are they going to replace him, and what has surprised you, or what are you most pleased with in Marty's development as a head coach? And Kent Hughes said, something to the effect of, 3 years ago, you were sitting there and kind of asking me why we hired a coach with no experience. And I was like, Kent Hughes is taking names. He's taking names, he's taking numbers, and he's not forgetting these things. I don't know that that's necessarily good or bad. I'm not going to make a morality play on that. But I do think it's interesting that, if you've asked something to Kent Hughes, it's not in one ear and out the other. He understands. I think that this front office, and to a certain extent the coach, are very in tune with the market. Everyone always says, oh, we block out the noise. We block out the noise. Like, Mitch Marner's the king of that in Toronto, but he knows everything that everybody's written about him ever, because he's not blocking out the noise.
Marner is not blocking out the noise.
No. And to a certain extent, I don't really believe that the Canadiens are, right? Like,
no,
nor do I think teams should, right? I think it is important that you take the temperature of your fan base, because ultimately, like, when the pressure from us and from the media becomes too high, that's when you lose your job. That's when the owner or the president of hockey operations has to make a move. So, like, the fact that, like, Kent Hughes is remembering that, to me, like, I don't know, it stood out to me that if he attacked Stu Cowan, like, unprovoked. I thought that was like, it was a great question, and it got a great answer after that. Don't get me wrong, but I did think it was funny that Kent Hughes kind of just remembered and said, 3 years ago, you were sitting right there and saying we hired a guy with no experience.
Yeah. I think what the biggest thing for me, like, and again, to summarize with the press conference, was not just the faith, et cetera, et cetera. He got asked, what does in the mix mean, right? Like, to us, in the mix is just, it's a meme of us having fun, right?
Yeah.
For us Habs fans, in the mix means the games are fun. It's like we're gonna live and die by each goal, each penalty. And
Yeah.
it feels like the playoffs to us. That's what in the mix means to us. But what in the mix to him, he said what it means to them is not necessarily quote unquote where we are in terms of the playoffs. He said in the mix means what progression are we making as a team? And I thought that was really shrewd because it sets up expectations for the market. But it also, I think, sends a message to the players. Like, don't get overexcited too early. There's so much work to do, right?
Mhm.
And I thought that was really, really interesting. And again, like to your point, right? They know that this is the audience because the team as a whole, like you could have players be really happy, but if the market is tuning out, is angry, is not happy about the product, stops spending on tickets, stops watching these games, turns them off and goes outside in the spring, like then that you've lost the market. That's when you lose your job. It doesn't necessarily like every single one of your players could be happy, right? In any other job, productive happy players that or productive happy employees, right? That's a success. Here,
Yeah.
like you also cater to the market. So I thought it was really, really funny that we've constantly been talking about in the mix in terms of playoff standings, right? We're talking about in the mix, meaning are they preventing a team from getting to the wild card spot? Are they claiming a wild card spot for themselves? Like, are their games relevant in terms of making the playoffs? And he's like, it's not about that. It's like, no. It's about progression. It's about where they are as a team. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought,
I I I'll interrupt just to say I think that's a load of crap. I think
I
that
don't believe him.
I don't believe a second of that. And
I don't
like
believe him at
that's
all.
fine. That's fine that it's about progression, which means it's about being better, which means it's about being closer to being a
To the
playoff team,
playoffs.
which is exactly what we all think. Like it's
Like
fine. I don't believe you though.
his job was to take this bottom feeding team and then make them a playoff contender. Obviously, that's what that means. But I thought like the thing is, like, as much as I don't believe him, I really like that that's how he approached the answer, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't want to sit there and set an expectation that the team might not meet because then, at the end of the season, locker cleanout day, every single one of them, plus Marty, plus, whoever, is going to be asked, what went wrong, right?
Yeah.
You'd rather say, it's just about progress and they make the playoffs. The day that they, whatever it is, they get eliminated, the following thing will be like, how hopeful are you for next year? How excited are you to come back, right? Like he's dictating the vibes and I'm totally okay with that. And not only that, I think it's a really shrewd way to approach that quote unquote question.
I just love the fact that this season has a tagline, like a motto, right?
Yeah.
We haven't, I don't think in the history of me watching this team that's ever really happened where we've all had like one line. I mean, there was like almost Bork and almost Eller. Those were things. Or here comes the Habs power play because it was bad. But like this is like a season long, like when we talk about if this team gets to the point where they win a Stanley Cup
Yeah.
as this core, we're going to remember this season as the in the mix season, the first season where we started to truly believe it could happen. Like we're going to remember this, and we'll remember like the fact that it was said at the golf tournament and that midway through the season reporters are still asking them about the in the mix quote. Like it's such a perfect earworm narrative for this market. I really like, I just love the fact that we have that. I think that, when you're watching a team, become something, go from unwatchable to a contender, this is like the most fun we're going to have without any kind of
Stress.
serious negative drawbacks because there are no serious expectations from us, right? Like if they make the playoffs, we're stoked. If not, we kind of thought they are what we thought they were.
Yeah.
But like once they start
and
to
we're
contend,
happy that they got closer, right?
right? Once they start to contend, that's expected, right?
Right.
Like it's expected that you win games and that you compete for a Stanley Cup and that you get one, right? So like right now, enjoy this. This is the best part of watching a team that you're invested in, is this stretch of time right now where we're laughing about the in the mix quote. Because like if they don't win, we look back at this later and we're like, man, it would be nice to be in the mix,
I think that's really funny. The one thing that I want to say, overall, before we move into our next segment, is that this does not look like a GM that is second guessing himself in any way. right? Because some decisions don't work out, right? And again, he got challenged on the Caden Primo thing, on the Justin Barron thing. He got asked if he had, or the organization had badly evaluated that. And I think sometimes like his answer to that was also like, I can't wait for Justin Barron. Essentially, he's like, I can't have 10 defensemen on this roster. Like there are rules about that. I can't do it. So like it's basically saying that he didn't have time to wait for Justin Barron anymore because that was holding the others back. So, even if it's a situation where he made a decision that might not have panned out, it's not like he's sitting there second guessing himself. He's like, all right, let me see what I can do to fix it. Right. Which I thought was really, really interesting. Like the Canadiens are not, they're not be sentimentalizing any players. They're not being too married to their decisions, which we outright accuse them of on this show. We said, Justin Barron, they're married to it because it's a decision he made, right? And I'm glad that means that he has the confidence to make those decisions and to turn around and change things if something that he tried did not work. Something that is working though is his faith in Slafkovsky. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Demidov. We're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff. And don't forget, we are doing the draw for a contest winner in our third segment. Plus, we have our trivia as always. So we will be talking about Slafkovsky up next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year, and the energy and excitement were unforgettable. In fact, I attended sports events too. It's such a fun time. It's such a good way to bond with family or friends, like going to a game, going to any kind of concert. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy as well. And now, Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I was looking for tickets to an upcoming game using the Gametime app. With Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right. So one thing that he got asked about in his presser was Slafkovsky. There has been a lot of talk about Slafkovsky this season. Is he okay? Is he back? Is he not back? What's happening? Is there a regression? I think what he said was, I don't think in that case he was feeding us a load of crap, right? He talked about how he knew, and he had that conversation with Slafkovsky as well, is that players like that, their development is not always going to be linear. It can be non-linear, and he had those conversations are being had. What he can do to improve is being talked about, right? Like Slafkovsky is fully aware of where he's at, and we talked about this on our episode yesterday, right? Like Slafkovsky is not losing confidence. Like even with these conversations that he's having, whether it's with the coaching staff, whether it's with Kent Hughes, whether it's with himself, he knows he needs to be better. He knows, his development curve is not fully it's not fully completed, I guess. Is a way to put it. Like he does not lose confidence. He comes back to every game and he comes back and he plays big every single time.
Yeah, and I think we need to understand that with bigger forwards, this is a thing, right? It's not. I would say that even among bigger forwards, he might be ahead of the curve. I was just looking at Tage Thompson's numbers, and I know they're different players, but they're big physical forwards. It took Tage Thompson like 5 or 6 years to get going. Yes, he was traded from St. Louis to Buffalo and that, but like it took him a while to get going. Quentin Byfield, it took him a few seasons to get going. So, all of this to say, like, I think that people are wondering, whether or not he's having a good season. He's not having a great season by the standards that he has for himself, the standards that we kind of thought he was going to reach this year. He's still on pace for 45 points, which is only 5 off from what he got last year. I don't, yes, it doesn't meet our expectations for what we wanted. And everybody keeps throwing up that the cap hit for Slafkovsky, like, oh, he needs to play to that. No, he doesn't. He's not on that cap hit right now. He's still on his rookie contract. So I'm holding him to the rookie contract standard for right now. Next year, that will change. And I think, Kent Hughes said that they knew he was going to regress. They knew that it wasn't going to be a linear progression. They knew all of this stuff when they drafted him. And I don't think they regret any of it. I don't think they will regret any of it because I really believe in the player. I think a lot of the panic is sort of overblown with him. We see the tools. The tools are there. Give him time. Does no one remember last year how the first half of the season he was terrible, and then he was like, "Oh wait, I'm actually really good at hockey," and then he started playing really well? Like, I would not put it past him to do that again.
Yeah, I also feel like, there was an injury this year too that he played through, right? And it's such a great point about the contract that you made, because I don't think enough people are talking about that, right? He's on his rookie contract right now. You're expecting him to behave like a rookie, and I think it's important to point that out as well. I'm not worried about Slafkovsky, and I was critical of the decision when he was first drafted, but turns out Kent Hughes knows what he's doing.
Every single one of us was.
Yeah.
And if
he knows what he's doing.
If you were like, "Oh no, this was the guy I wanted," I bet you're lying. There was no shot. Everybody wanted Shane Wright. Yeah. I think Montreal made the right choice.
Yes, and the thing is really funny is I can't go around and say that he was the one I wanted, because there's maybe 15 different episodes before that in which I'm on the record saying is I wanted Shane Wright. So
yeah.
But I think it's possible too that when Reinbacher starts playing and is a meaningful part of this team, that maybe the method to that madness also becomes clear to us. We already talked about Michkov and how he kind of was able to run a little bit of his own show there. So I do think that, for me, at this point, right, he came in, he made some decisions that I question, like having a coach who's never coached a professional hockey game in his life, let alone even being a high school coach. And I've started to see where it's my default should not be to question the decision making of this front office. My default should be to wait and see.
I think
what they're cooking.
The questioning isn't so much why would you do, or what are you doing, as in you're making a mistake, but why are you doing it? Why, what is it about Marty that was so appealing? And he kind of explained that in the press conference on Wednesday, that his emotional intelligence, his analytical mind, his drive to be better, the way that he can talk to players, and this is what, when Marty came in, everybody was sort of saying the same thing, that there's not a player in that room he can't relate to. He was a cast out for a long time, right? He was passed over in expansion drafts. He was, waived. He ended up in Tampa, and it changed his career. So that's sort of what we're looking at in Marty, and the decision making that the Canadiens are making up and down the organization.
Right. And I think what's also important, I mean, we didn't mention Marty in terms of who he has faith in, but this is clearly one, right? He talked about asking Marty what he needs and giving Marty what he needs, right? He is in the habit of trusting the people he put in a position to execute their whatever it is their roles are. And we saw the improvements, right? And again, there's this mysterious thing saying something was not working out earlier in the season, and then whatever that was that happened was fixed. And I don't think it had anything to do with a toxic locker room or whatever it was. I don't think you come back this quickly from that. But I thought it was really interesting. He has his finger on the pulse, and he's not afraid to kind of, have those difficult conversations and to trust players or coaches when they say you need something. And so I don't know. I'm feeling like the Canadiens are in good hands, especially with this duo. They haven't really shown us anything to lose faith in just yet. In fact, they had a lot more faith than we did. We questioned a lot of stuff. And one thing that I want to talk to before moving on to selecting our contest winner is Demidov. So you got asked about Demidov. You got asked it something was it a good idea to go there? Something like that. Which again, yes, there are some implications to that and stuff. But he talked about how this is a player that he alluded to only one of them having seen play in Russia, and we think it's Bobrov, right?
We have to know it's Bobrov. There's nobody else who fits the bill there.
Right. And then so they're like, and then like, what was the conversation you were having with the coach? Like, I think people expected him to say, like, oh, I went over there to yell at that coach to give him more ice time or whatever. And it was like, no, like we have those conversations about where's he at? What do you think he needs to do? Here's what we think he needs to do. Right. So I think it's just more and more evident that Demidov is probably the reason they went there at this time is like he's more and more he's in the plan for the immediate future.
Yeah, and there was the someone asked him if he's going to play for Montreal before the end of the year. I don't know who thought that was a possibility, but
He has to
he
finish out
can't.
his season. He's got a contract, man.
Yeah, he literally can't. I don't know where that came from, but we are in the calendar year where we're going to see Ivan Demidov play games for the Montreal Canadiens, and like I don't know, that's one of the coolest things to look forward to right now is being able to see this guy who's going to get slotted in probably on the second line as soon as he gets here. I just don't know how else to feel about this other than incredibly excited every time I see a video on Blue Sky of him doing something we just haven't seen a Canadian do in a long time.
Yeah. And one final thing, just before we move on to our next segment, is that they talked about something similar with Michael H. too, is like having a conversation with his coach, seeing what's going on there. And so I just want to like, just, everybody think about how exciting this team is now. Think about how much fun we're having now. And then just think of this team with those additions in the future. Like, just think about what it's going to look like then. There's a lot of the work is cut out for them. It's not going to be immediate. They're going to have a lot of growing pains, but it's a fun time to be a Habs fan. And then I have a lot of faith in this front office is my conclusion from that extremely testy, kind of almost begrudging. It's like it was announced like a couple of hours before he spoke to the media that he was going to do it. Like, but between all of that, like I feel very confident with this team in place.
Yeah, no, same. I think it's important for me to every time I listen to this, and usually when it's Gorton and Hughes, there's a little bit more of an air of comedy on the stage. Um, but like I really enjoy listening to them talk about the game. I value the way that they look at the game. We disagree on a lot of stuff, but that it's still, if you listen, you're going to get a better idea of how they think. I think a lot of times when we talk about like roster moves and transactions, and we're like, they should do this. But like, we need to put it in the perspective of how is Kent Hughes thinking about this? How is Jeff Gorton thinking about this? Right? Like, I talk all the time about the lineup I would want to use and the one that Marty would use. They're different things. So these press conferences are just opportunities for me to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's really, really fun too that like, they're pretty transparent about how they think, like, but you have to kind of read between the lines because there's a lot of stuff they don't tell us, and you kind of understand it. But I think it's really funny that he'll often talk about things like, well, like we did this thing for this reason, and like in retrospect, it looks so obvious. We don't have that background information, but just in that throwaway comment, we kind of get what he means. Anyway, all this to say is that the Canadiens are in good hands. And coming up next, we are drawing our contest winner. And that's coming up in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because from big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. One of the things that I really love doing around the NFL playoffs, and particularly as we get into the Super Bowl, is all of the NFL prop bets. Those are the most fun things in my mind. That's why I love FanDuel. Everything is so easy to use, and you can just find everything all in the same place. So you can visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this NFL playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And us. All right, Ian, are we ready?
Yes, we are.
We are ready. Do you want to hold up one last time the prize. We wanted to thank everyone for their loyalty. In December, we ran a contest in which if you sent us a review or you showed us that we were in your top 5 for the year of podcast listens, whether it was on your Spotify Wrapped or others, we asked you to send us a screenshot and we entered you into a contest. I had put up for transparency, I put up the link so that you guys can verify that your names are on there. All corrections have been made. And I will be sharing the randomizer so that you can see it in real time as it happens. I'm going to be sharing it, and Ian's going to tell me if everyone can see it, just because I have to do it. And if you give me just one moment, you should be able to see my Chrome tab showing the randomizer. Ian, is it visible on the screen? We're good.
Yes.
All right. And you can see here on the right-hand side, everybody who was on that spreadsheet has been entered and your names are all here. And so I'm going to do like a drum roll, which you probably can't even hear. And I'm going to click to spin to see who wins.
It feels like the draft lottery all over again.
Doesn't it? All right, so this is a user on Blue Sky, esan33, which I hope I'm saying it right. I love how like it has sound effects too. I don't know if you guys can hear that clapping. So here's our winner. So you follow us on Blue Sky. That's where we got your entry. Please email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com so we can coordinate you getting this picture of Carey Price. It's signed. It's authentic. I just want to say, like, all these people, we thank you so much. Like, just listening to us all the time and like, you know, keeping us honest and interacting and we're so grateful for you guys. Congratulations to esan33. All right.
And just a note on that, the faster you get that email to us, the faster I will get it in the mail. So it is no longer mine. That's how I'm looking at this. I will take good care of it until further notice.
Yes. So, and we were just talking before we started recording about more contests like this that we can run over the course of the season, just because you guys have been so great and it's such a fun time to be talking about the Canadiens. But we have our daily trivia. So, Ian, do you remember yesterday's question? Because I completely forgot it. I think I got it right, but
yeah, you got it right as soon as we hit stop recording. It was a follow the player path. And a lot of folks got this one right. This is a fan favorite. Montreal, St. Louis, Washington, New York Islanders, Boston, Vancouver, New York Rangers. Laura, do you remember the answer?
Yes, the answer is Jaro Halak.
Correct, Jaroslav Halak. And among those who got the answer right, we have Sleeping Dragon, who was yesterday's winner, I believe. Bren Meadoff, who, by the way, Bren Meadoff is the host of a new Montreal Canadiens podcast. They should be your third listen of the day whenever they come out. The Habs cast, go find them wherever you get your podcast. They're really, really great stuff. So
nice job. Also, Habs cast, hit us up. Let's do a crossover. Yes.
Marku888 also got it, and Molitars also was the first person to admit to using Google in the past to get questions right. And you know what? I could be upset, but I think I admire the honesty more than anything. So thank you for that, Molitars, for that. Because I have my suspicions about some of these answers, because some of them are ridiculous. Yeah. But Chad McIntosh was the only one who was first. So Chad McIntosh, congratulations on being the first one to write Jaroslav Halak at the very early hours of the morning on Wednesday.
And so right, the Google thing is why we don't offer those prizes for winning the trivia, because we can't watch you, so we don't know. Yeah. But we're trusting you, especially you Molitars, going forward. No Googling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, today's question. This one's I think this one's kind of fun. 50 players have suited up for just one game with the Montreal Canadiens. Not at least one game. They've played one game with the Montreal Canadiens, but only one of those players scored a goal in their lone game with the Montreal Canadiens. Who was it? So one guy who came in, had one goal in one game, and then never played for Montreal again. Who is that player? If you have it, put it in the comments, email it to us, send it to us on Blue Sky. We'll shout you out, whoever gets it first, and we'll pin that user as well.
That is a fantastic question. I absolutely love it. All right, for the rest of you, make sure that you are subscribed to this podcast. Oh, tomorrow's our mailbag day. Make sure you get mailbag questions in. You can send them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can send them to us on Instagram. You can send them to us on Blue Sky. You can send them to us on TikTok. Send us mailbag questions. You can also leave them in the YouTube comments. Make sure you're subscribed to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Make sure you tell your friends. As you know, we give you guys presents too. And make sure you follow us all over social media. Like I just mentioned, we're Locked On Canadiens everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, Gmail, all kinds of stuff. You'll find my co-host all over social media. Maybe it's Ian. You will find me at The Active Stick. We want to thank you all for listening, and we will see you tomorrow with the mailbag.